Every one of us at some point or another in our lives has had the experience of being rejected, abandoned, dishonored in some way. I didn't get the job, I didn't make the team, I was fired, my spouse divorced me, nobody calls me. We've all had that experience in some way of feeling neglected. And we know that our God is a God that never abandons us, that Jesus is the one who came from heaven, from his place in heaven, to be with us here on earth, become a carpenter's son, to get his hands dirty. He was a carpenter's son, he got splinters in his hands. He lived in Nazareth with open sewers. He wanted to be close to people, particularly people that felt abandoned and despondent. It's very, very much a part of our lives that every day we meet people that have suffered tremendously, and unfortunately, sometimes even within the church itself. I've heard people say, I like Jesus, I believe in God, but sometimes I have trouble with the church, which usually means that there was some personal experience that went terribly wrong. Maybe a confession that turned out to be a very traumatic experience. Maybe the experience of some form of abuse, particularly if it was by a member of the clergy. I have a good friend of mine who is a survivor of sexual abuse by a clergyman, by a priest. She says that for many, many years, she knew that God loved her. She just had that sense that there was something sacred in the church every time she went in, but she would only go in when there was nobody there. And a priest might come out and just the sight of the collar would repulse her, would cause her to trigger and to traumatize over her experience. And it took her many, many years until finally at one point, she doesn't exactly remember, she said, you know what? I'm not going to let any man interfere with my relationship with God. And she got the courage to be able to find her way into the church. Now, not every survivor comes back to that point, but I want you to know that the door of my heart, the door of our church is open to you. And even though it may have been years, or perhaps it's been very difficult for you to go into a church to attend Mass, I want you to know that we're going to open the doors for everyone that has suffered any form of abuse, not only sexual abuse, but perhaps some form of domestic violence or something that has happened that may need healing. All of us really need healing. And whether it's a personal wound that we carry, many times suffering in silence, or whether it's a good friend, a spouse, brother, sister, child, parent that may have experienced this, all of us are affected by this. And we all want to pray for one another. We want to be there for one another. We want to give them the presence of Jesus himself, which of course is no more real here on earth than at the Mass, in the Eucharist. It's been said that, and I know many popes have said this as well too, that we're never closer to heaven on earth than when we're with Jesus in the holy sacrifice of the Mass. And I would like that experience to be available to more, for us to be able to know that we can come together, we can experience the healing that comes from the presence of Christ, that gives us hope. And towards that end, I will be inviting everyone to join me throughout the diocese as we schedule a series of Masses for the intentions of hope and healing, that anyone who would like to pray with us, whether you yourself may be a survivor or be a friend of a survivor, to just pray for that hope and healing, that by coming together, by turning to the Lord, he will touch our hearts and bring us closer to him and hopefully to one another. God wants us to experience his presence, and he wants us to know that when we walk together in love and faith with one another, he is with us. He never abandons us. Our God is a God of love.